All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the DTM Music Podcast. This is episode number 23 of the podcast. I'm Devin Dunnigan, and here with me, as always, is Mr. Stephen Mott. How you doing, brother?
Great brother Jake.
All righty, and Pete, what about you?
Good.
All righty, so today we're going to be talking about the 1982 record Hughes Thrall. So the collaboration between Glenn Hughes of Deep Purple, of course, and Trapeze, and Pat Thrall of the Pat Travers Band. So, I mean, this is an interesting collaboration. Of course, I mean, didn't last but for one album, and they did record a follow up, or at least started working on a follow up, but it just never did happen. But I mean, I enjoy this record. I mean, this is Steven's pick, so I mean, we'll find out more about his opinions on the album as we go through the track by track review. But I mean, not a whole lot of backstory that I found. Just pretty much they got together and made this record. And the band on the album, I mean, of course, Glenn Hughes on vocals and bass. You've got Pat Thrall on guitar and guitar synthesizer. Gary Ferguson on drums and Frankie Banali on drums for two songs on the record, First Step of Love and Hold Out Your Life. And then you've got Gary Malaber, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that right, on the drums as well. And you've got Peter Schless. I'm probably butchering that name as well. But, I mean, quite a few drummers, and then only Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall on the guitars and bass, and then one keyboardist. So, I mean, it's a pretty interesting record. I mean, you've got Andy Johns, of course, known for Led Zeppelin, and he later did Van Halen's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. But, I mean, this album sounds a whole lot like a Led Zeppelin album. I mean, sonically, it's a whole lot like a Zeppelin album, in particular, the drums on the record. But, I mean, the only album by Hughes Thrall, like I said, and I'll get into a little bit about the follow-up here a little bit later. But, I mean, Stephen, what are your thoughts and opening opinions on this record so far, Steve, since this was your pick?
Well, we might be in for an interesting episode each year. And besides that, I don't know anything about neither one of these guys, Hughes or Thrall, Glenn Hughes or Pat Thrall, I guess their names is. See, that shows you I don't really know what their names all the way are. I just kind of came across this album and or kind of remembered some people talking about it and stuff. So that's the only reason I know this album, and I listened to it a couple times before this review. So back to you, Devin.
All righty. So I guess we can dive into this record with the very first track on the record, I Got Your Number. So this is a very good opener to the record. I mean, it kind of sets the tone for the album. I mean, it starts off very kind of AOR, very commercial rock, and then kind of gets into this more heavier sort of vibe. And I enjoy it. I think it's really, really good. And I mean, not too much else I can say other than that. I mean, I like the song. I think the song is really, really good. So, Steve, what are your thoughts on I Got Your Number?
Well, this one, I really like this song, and like I said, I heard the first two songs in this album, this one and the next one after this before, and I thought these two were really good. And this is for my notes verbatim, chapter 1. This is a tremendous song. All the parts of the song are really good. All the changes it goes through, and the bridges, or the pre-chorus, or whatever you want to call it. So back to you, Devin.
All righty. So, Pete, what are your thoughts on I Got Your Number?
When I first heard it, it was a bunch of high notes, and they had pretty good guitar playing in it. And that's all I got to say.
Okay. All right. So we move to track number 2, The Look in Your Eyes. So this was the single off the record. A video was made to promote the single, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a really, really good song. I mean, not too much I can say other than that. I mean, I enjoy this record. I think this record's a really good album. And I mean, Glenn Hughes is he's been the term's been coined throughout his career that he's the voice of rock, and I probably would agree with that. I mean, he's up there as one of the best vocalists of all time. So I mean, I really enjoy the song. I've never actually seen the video, so I don't even know what the video is, but I enjoy the song well enough though. So I mean, there you go. So Steve, what are your thoughts on The Look in Your Eye?
Well, first of all, I'm gonna say that I know I keep referencing this, but this is the last point I'm gonna make, possibly. But I mean about this. So the first two songs in the album, this one and the one before, it seems like that they had these written previously before they even really decided to make this album. It seems to me like they had these couple of songs written, and this is completely of my opinion, but I think they just kind of decided to do an album off of these songs because I mean just the fact that they're the first two tracks on the album, you know, um, and they really, to me, they're by far the best on the album. And I mean, the rest of the album is like a completely different, in its own world. And the production sounds similar, but the songwriting sounds completely off the wall different. Back to you, Devin.
All right. So Pete, what are your thoughts on The Look in Your Eye?
It was sung weird, but it had good parts. And the other parts was junk. That's my thoughts.
Okay. So we then move to track number 3, Beg, Borrow, or Steal. So this one reminds me of something that could have been on Led Zeppelin's In Through the Outdoor. This has kind of a later era Zeppelin vibe, something like off of Presence or In Through the Outdoor. And I enjoy it. I think this is a really good song. I mean, kind of a mid-tempo type song. A lot of keyboards on this one. It has this kind of slower groove, but I enjoy it. I think it's a really cool song, and that's all I have to say. So, Steve, take this track.
Not really a good song uh, at all, but I like the I like the production, like I said before, and the instrumentals. Uh, and really, what I mean by that, the instrumentation, um, is because um, I mean the parts. It's like the actual guitar parts and stuff was pretty good, but then it's like whoever came up with the lyrics and the actual, like, the lyrical structure and the melody structure, really, I don't know, just didn't pay any attention to what they were doing, and they just kind of just, it's like they flatlined it of just a straight vocal melody over the whole thing. And really, it kind of continues that way for the rest of the album from here on out, to be honest. And there's no real melody in these songs, the rest of them. And I don't know, and two, I don't really like the song itself. Uh, and but the instrumentation makes it a little bit better. So that sums it up. So back to you, Devin.
All right, so then we move to track number 4, Where Did the Time Go? So this is another kind of mid-tempo song, very commercial. I mean, the chorus is extremely commercial, but I dig it. I think it's a great song. I mean, I love this album. Overall, I love this album, and I mean, yeah, really good song. So, Steve, take this track.
All right, number 4. The vocals sound very odd on this track to me throughout, and there's not a lot of melody to the song whatsoever in any way, and it's just kind of a straight line, or flat line, whatever you want to say, of just straight and one note across the whole album. I mean, across this whole song of the vocal, and really, I mean, I like the guitar solo at the end and stuff, but that was really good, and that really enhanced the song. At least maybe it would make it a 1 out of 10, if that, in parentheses, probably not. So back to you, Devin.
So then we move to track number 5, Muscle and Blood. So speaking of Zeppelin, this is another one that has a very, very huge Zeppelin vibe to it, but I love it. I think this it's very, very heavy. I love this song. The riff is amazing, and I mean, during some of the bridges, it's very, very commercial sounding, but still has this sort of heaviness to it. I mean, the drummer on this track is extremely great. I'm not sure who plays the drums on this song, but whoever it is, they're really, really good. And I love the effect of the cowbell being used during the opening riff and all. So I mean, I love it. I think the song's great, and this is one that Glenn Hughes has played a lot on his solo endeavors. So I mean, I love it. So Steve, take this track.
This song just for me seems to completely come out of the blue, and it's completely different from everything else. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's just like in context of this album, being on the middle of this album, track number 5 of 9, it doesn't make any sense. Uh, but I did like the guitar solo in it. Uh, and you know, that's really the only bright spot of it. And uh, so I don't know. Back to you, Devin.
Alrighty. So Pete, what are your thoughts on Muscle and Blood?
My thoughts are empty. That's my thoughts.
Okay. So then we move to track number 6, Hold Out Your Life. So this is another very heavy song, and this features Frankie Banali on drums. Rest in peace, Frankie Banali. He passed away last year, known for his drumming in Quiet Riot, Wasp, of course, this album. Amazing drummer. But I mean, I love this song. I love this song. I think this has got a very fast and furious sort of vibe to it. And I love it. I mean, just a really, really cool song. So I mean, nothing more to add other than a great track. So Steve, you take this track.
Well, rhythmically, this song is completely all over the place, and it really sounds out of time, honestly. Especially the intro, but really the whole thing. The riff and the drums really don't mesh, and something this might sound far out, but nothing in no other way but rhythmically. The way it was, like it didn't make any sense rhythmically. It reminds me of Get Up off of 5150 by Van Halen, just because that song sounded off rhythmically to me too, and it almost sounds like that Alex Van Halen is at some points just gets out of time and just like starts playing off the wall stuff. And I don't know who the drummer is for this song, uh, for this album in particular. Like Devin said before, I really don't know. But for this one, I mean the drums were not good. Everything else, really everything else was bad too. But the drums were to top it all off. And really, I think this song is far, far too long. But to tell you the truth, 1 second would have been too long. And so that's pretty much it. So back to you, Devin.
So then we move to track number 7, Who Will You Run To? So another very commercial track. I really love it though. I think this is another great song on this album. And I mean, not too much else to add other than that. I mean, the chorus is extremely, extremely commercial, but I love it. So, I mean, not too much else to add other than that. So, Steve, take this track.
All right. The lead guitar sounds like it's trying to be like Eddie Van Halen. Um, take that as you will. Of course, I think this album came out in 1982. If I saw that right on YouTube, in which I think I'm not really sure when Van Halen started, but I'm not really sure that timetable would add up. But it's probably not. But it just kind of that's what it puts me in mind of. Anyway, and as far as the song goes, it honestly isn't good enough to do anything with. And there's yet another 5150 reference, folks. So back to you, Devin.
So then we move to track number 8, Coast to Coast. So this is a cover of the band Trapeze, which was Glenn Hughes' band before he joined Deep Purple, a very bluesy, jazzy sort of band. Not too much into them. I don't know a whole lot of their stuff. Actually, other than this song. So, I mean, if that says anything about it, just something I've never checked out before. But I love this song. I think this song is really, really amazing. It starts out starts out with some acoustic, and then just, it's a very laid back, just kind of slower song for the record. And it's different from the whole entire record. Every song that come before it, it's very different than those songs because it adds in the acoustic elements and just this kind of dreamlike quality to it. And I just love it. I think this is a great song. Glenn Hughes hitting some great high notes on this track. And this is another one that he's taken with him throughout his solo career. So I love it. So Steve, take Coast to Coast.
Well, this tries to be the slow moving, soothing, you know, decent, good song, but it comes off as just this totally worthless, crapless, lifeless piece of crap that is far from being a 9 on a 10 scale. And there's the Sammy Hagar reference, folks. And see, so there you go. Uh, take that and run off with it all you want to. But anyway, this is a wild episode. But anyway, this is a bad song, bad songwriting. I like the production, but I like the kind of different mood to it or whatever. That's kind of an odd way to say it, but it's just something different. But it's just kind of slow moving, and it just seems to never end. It's it's almost like I say a runaway train thing with Van Halen. Well, this is like a runaway train of a slow song that you want to end, like you want to be a runaway train and end as quickly as possible. So back to you, Devin.
All righty. So then we move to track number 9, First Step of Love. So, I mean, it starts out with this kind of mellower, somber tone, and then quickly gets into this very more heavier, bombastic sort of chorus. And I love it. I think it's a great final, just finale, a good way to end the record. And I love it. I think it's a great song overall and great way to end the album. So, I mean, not too much else to say other than that. I love this song. So, Stephen, take First Step of Love.
Well, this one is once again very odd, bad, and continues to crap over as it rolls. And it's rolling downhill, it's not going uphill by any means. And so and Duck South is really the far superior album to this, to compare. And and really the vocals are terrible, out of tune, and not out of crap, because it's sure full of that. So back to you, Devin.
All righty. So, Pete, what are your thoughts on First Step of Love?
It's like the first step through the door.
Okay. So that brings it into the album. There are 2 bonus tracks on the 2007 remastered edition. And I heard these songs a long time ago. I don't even know how I heard them. I have heard both of these songs, and I remember both of them just being not good. It just did not fit the context of the album at all. I know the one song, Still the Night, ended up on the album Phenomena. Or it's like a series of concept albums that were put out from the 80s, even up through here more recently. But those songs did not fit the record. They had a totally different vibe compared to these. And I mean, that brings it into the record. And I don't have much else to say. I guess I'll give my rankings real quick and then pass it off to two other guys here. So I'll give this album a 8.5 out of 10. I really love this record, and I don't know why I wouldn't give it a 10, but I'm just not going to give it a 10. I do love the album, though, and that's all I have to say about that. I love the record, but it gets an 8 out of 10. So, I mean, it's still a good rating either way. So, Steve, give it a 0 out of 10.
All right. So this album, my rating is a 0 out of 10. There was two, there was two good songs at the very beginning, but it was, you know, to compare to 5150, there was about 3 good ones on that one. But just because there's a couple of good ones on an album does not make it any, like, it doesn't get a 2 out of 10 for getting 2 good songs, and not for me. In my mind, if the songs don't fit with each other on this, on an album, if they don't, you know, the only thing that really sounded the same or either even corresponded somewhat with this whole album with each other with any of the songs was the production. And really, that's kind of a no duh because, unless you have a different producer for every song, then it's going to sound the same. So obviously, it's supposed to sound that way. And thank goodness it did, because that's the only good thing about this album. 0 out of 10. And the whole album is a complete disappointment. And I don't know. That's it. That's all I got to say. Duck South is completely better than this. 5150 is a ton worlds of better than this. So back to you, Devin.
Okay. So, Pete, give your final thoughts on the record, your rating.
3 out of 10.
Okay. So that brings an ending to this record review today, and just a little bit of final little tidbits here before we wrap it on up. I mean, released August of '82 on the Boulevard Records label. I've never heard of that label until looking up this album. And the only album, of course, by Hughes Thrall. A second album was planned, but never happened. And they did attempt to do something else later on, and they said it had been recorded and was slated to be released, but supposedly they started the album in like 1997 and finished it up in 2006. And basically Glenn Hughes said he doesn't take 6 months to record an album, so much less taking over a decade to put out an album. And I understand that. I mean, I'd like to hear it though. I mean, there's only been one of these big collaborations that's put out a second album. That was Whitford St. Holmes. And I mean, Coverdale Page never put out a second record. This band's never put out a second record. But I mean, I'd love to hear another album out of both Coverdale Page and Hughes Thrall. But I mean, the album is very divided, though. I have seen a lot of people say that they disliked it, or at least thought it was a little bit underwhelming and felt that it could have been a lot better than what it was. But I've always really dug this album. And I heard of this album from the Rock and Metal Combat podcast. Ian Wadley, he had picked this as his pick of the week one day. And I listened to it and really enjoyed it. This is one I go back to here and there. I heard it for the first time in a long time preparing for this review, but I do listen to it maybe at least once or twice a year, maybe a little bit more depending on it. I really enjoy this record. So, I mean, there you go. So, Steven, what are your picks of the week this week? Movie, music, whatever.
Well, as usual, I haven't pondered this whatsoever, just to give some insight here. And I usually venture to Halloween, but this time I will venture to Jason. And I might have actually said this one before in previous episodes, but I'm going to say Jason Goes to Manhattan, I believe it's called. I want you to watch that one, the folks listening. And as far as uh, music goes, I was going to say movie. I've already said movie. So I usually do the music first. But the music, um, you need to go listen to, let's see, Leonard Skinner, The Last Rebel. So that's an interesting endeavor there. If you were to listen to Hughes, Thrall and The Last Rebel back to back, it's like completely opposites. So, and it's the same sort of genre, but it's complete opposites, completely different productions. So just go and try that. So back to you, Devin.
So I'll do my picks of the week this week real quick. So I actually did decide both my movie and CD pick. So my record pick or CD pick, whatever you want to call it, would be Molly Hatchet's 1983 album, No Guts, No Glory. So this was the big reunion album with Danny Joe Brown. And quite honestly, it was the beginning of the end for the band. I mean, after this, they would put out The Deed Is Done, which we've reviewed on this podcast before. Go listen to that to hear our thoughts on that record. But I mean, the band would go down a hill that basically headed straight down and didn't really pick back up. And I know they have released a bunch of great albums here more currently. And I mean, I like every Molly Hatchet album for the most part. I mean, some more than others, but I mean, overall, this album is really great, and I think it's unfairly overlooked in the discography. I think a lot of people need to check this one out because this one, I just think gets overlooked, but I think it really does sound like the classic Molly Hatchet sound. So I totally recommend that. And I'm going to kind of keep in the Molly Hatchet sort of area. I'm going to pick this DVD that I just got through watching right before we recorded here. Live at Rock Palace, 1996. So this is the Devil's Canyon tour, and really good show. Not perfect, but still a pretty good show. And I'm going to actually review this DVD on my channel of my own, the Danger Zone Reviews, because I have some things I want to say about this release. But definitely worth checking out if you're a Molly Hatchet fan. A great DVD with some huge issues, but still great. But I mean, that's all I have to say. That's my picks of the week. So I mean, we'll start wrapping this podcast up here with my kind of final words to you on where you can find us at. So we have a YouTube page. Just type in the DTM Music Podcast on YouTube. We have an Anchor page, Podbean page, Facebook group, a Facebook page. Find us on all of those. Stephen Mott's got his Ridgeline Podcast YouTube page where he puts up material. I've got my own YouTube page where I put up material on there. And coming soon, the new Ridgeline Podcast, which is a new collaboration between me and Stephen. And I mean, a lot more other stuff to come very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. So I mean, that's all I have to say. So that brings this podcast to an end, episode number 23. So really, really interesting album pick this week. And next week we'll be back with something. I'm not sure what it will be yet, but we will be back with something. So stay tuned for that. So God bless you all. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon, receive all notifications, and as I always say to end this thing out, stay safe, stay healthy, stay frosty. See you next time.